Okay, Andrew, you can go ahead.
Thank you, Kira. Good morning, everybody, and thank you for joining today's session. I'm Andrew Campbell-Eady. I'm the Head of Communications and Events at the Irish Centre for Diversity. We recently held the National Diversity and Inclusion Awards 2026 to recognise and celebrate the valuable work being done to progress diversity and inclusion in Ireland. This webinar series has been devised to share the insights and experiences from the sponsor, the winner, and finalists, that any learnings can be applied to your organisation or to help with entering the next awards cycle. Today's session focuses on the category Advancing Allyship and Bystander Engagement, which is kindly sponsored by PJ Hegarty. Established in 1925, PJ Hegarty is Ireland's most progressive building company. They undertake projects throughout Ireland and the UK from their offices in Dublin, Cork, Limerick, and London, and are a leading company in large-scale construction. This is their first time as sponsors of the National Diversity and Inclusion Awards, and we're delighted to have them on board. Thank you very much. Thank you for your support, which helps to make the awards possible. Congratulations are also due to the team at PJ Hegarty as proud holders recently of Investors in Diversity Gold. This is the top tier of Ireland's premier diversity and inclusion accreditation and framework for progress in this vital area. Before we start, it's important to mention that PJ Hegarty, like the other sponsors and the Irish Centre for Diversity, had no part in the judging process and couldn't enter themselves. I'll shortly hand over to the award sponsor, and then we'll hear from some of the finalists and end with the award winner wrapping up in about an hour. Automatic closed captions are available in the Teams controls, and instructions will be shortly posted in the chat function for those that need them. The session is being recorded and will be available on the Irish Centre for Diversity website, which is irishcentrefordiversity.ie or simply icfd.ie. Everyone is muted except the panel. Please do share any comments in the chat function. We'd love to hear which organisations you're joining us from or any feedback you'd like to give the panel. There isn't time for Q&As, but you might get answers to any questions that you may have in response to anything that you've heard today by contacting any of the panelists through LinkedIn or other social networks. To get started, I'm very pleased to introduce our host for today's session, Jan Glynn. Jan is Head of Human Resources at PJ Hegarty. Jan will give an insight into PJ Hegarty's diversity and inclusion advances and lead what is sure to be an enlightening and an uplifting conversation. Over to you, Jan.
Thanks very much, Andrew, and to everybody on the call today. Appreciate your time. So we were very honoured to be asked to be sponsors for this award. As Andrew mentioned, we started our DE&I journey way back in 2020, and it culminated in achieving gold in 2025. But I use the word journey there because that's what it is. It doesn't end with just achieving gold. And our focus in PJ Hegarty is to make sure that every person who works with us, for us, and around us can come to work every day and feel safe and secure to bring their most authentic selves to work, and to know that PJ Hegarty will support them in doing this. These awards are just so important to recognise and celebrate the amazing work that's going on out there in every company, and to ensure that the message and the focus of DE&I is at the forefront of everything that we do. And I think that's even more important now, and it was mentioned at the awards, especially in today's climate. The world is a scary place at the minute now, and there's a lot going on. So when you attend an event like this and you see that there are still so many people passionate about this, it's very uplifting and gives us all, I think, some hope. We're also delighted to see that 3 construction companies are represented here today, between a winner, a finalist, and a sponsor. The perception of the construction industry is often very different to what is actually going on in real life. And I had that perception myself before I joined PJ Hegarty almost 3 years ago. And yes, there's no getting away from it. It is a very male-dominated industry, and there are very common views and thoughts about what it's like to work in construction. So to have this representation today, and also to see more companies, not just construction, going on this DE&I journey, I think is just amazing and needs to be celebrated. At PJ Hegarty, we have said that we're going on our gold journey, and it is a journey. And at the moment, the area of allyship and bystander engagement is critical for us. We can do everything as a senior leadership team. We can have all the board sponsors that we want. We meet at the D&I committee, and we know it's very, very important to us. But if we're not continually educating, empowering, and reinforcing this every single day with our teams, our staff, our colleagues, our clients, our subcontractors, anybody who works with us, we just actually won't achieve anything. So as Andrew said, we had absolutely nothing to do with the judging process, thank goodness, because I don't know how anybody could judge some of the amazing awards or the entries that we're in. It's a tough job. So they have my absolute respect for that. But we are delighted to hear from the panel today because they're leading the way in this area. We're all on this journey, but these guys here today are just going to show us how, the great work that's going on there. They're going to show us what great looks like. We're going to listen to everything that they're going to tell us. And hopefully we're all going to get some hints, tips and ideas that we can take back to our companies, helping us become better in the DE&I space and specifically in the area of allyship and bystander engagement. So without further ado, I'm very happy to hand across to our panel. However, for the first award, unfortunately, FFH Management, who were a finalist, they unfortunately couldn't make it here today. But we'd like to congratulate them, and certainly from PJ Hegarty, on their achievement and read out the main judges' comment. There was a lot of comments about their award, but overall the judges loved that as a small organisation, FFH showed that allyship doesn't depend on scale, that you can do things even in a small company. It doesn't need big budgets. So we'd like to say a big congratulations and well done to all at FFH Management. And now I'm going to hand on to Donal Hines. So Donal is with us today and he's going to speak on behalf of Bord Gáis Energy, who were a finalist. Donal, the judges described your allyship programme as brave and much needed. Your transgender inclusion policy places trust and dignity firmly in the hands of the employee. So a little question for you to start you off before you tell us about your amazing entry. How has taking such a clear values-led stance shaped allyship and confidence within your company, both for your trans colleagues and your managers supporting them? Over to you.
Good morning, everybody, and thanks for inviting me to this webinar to present. First off, as you can guess, my name is Donal Hines, and I'm in the regulatory and policy team on Bord Gáis Energy. So you might ask how I transitioned from regulatory and policy team into involvement in networks. So on Bord Gáis Energy, we have a network structure that is brought in from numerous different networks, such as Mental Health Network, Cares Network, Working Parents Network, Women's Network, and Broad. So I am the co-chair on our Broad network in Bord Gáis Energy. And we had looked at developing a transgender policy to ensure that staff would feel safe and included, and that they have freedom to be themselves, and that would exist as a benchmark and a minimum standard for all colleagues within Bord Gáis Energy. I suppose just to give a little bit of background to the policy before we look at the question as such, is what the policy actually does. So we looked at developing this transgender policy. We looked at the transition that those would undertake. So we recognise that colleagues need to choose their own pace, who is told, when and what is shared, and that should all belong to the colleague themselves. We looked at the idea for paid time off for gender affirming care, and including flexible medical appointments, treatments, and flexible return to work support as well. And access to facilities aligned with identity, ensuring that there was gender-aligned bathrooms and changing facilities, plus unisex options and flexible affirming dress codes as well. As well as that, as a basis, I'm sure we're all following zero tolerance for transphobia within the company, and also, I suppose, identify affirming systems. For instance, on our work signatures now, we have pronoun availability for each member of staff so that everybody can know the correct pronouns to use as well. I suppose just coming back to that question on, I suppose, how it is assisted, and I suppose for instance, in relation to manager confidence in relation to the policy, it's removed uncertainty. Managers now have a clear roadmap on how to support a transition, both respectively and consistently, and it also empowers proactive allyship. So managers are more equipped now to normalise pronoun use, address concerns early, and kind of model inclusive behaviour, and kind of create a psychologically safe environment for colleagues as well. And also it builds trust and consistency amongst our staff and amongst our managers, and that relationship is strengthened from this. So I suppose that's kind of just an overview of the policy itself, and kind of where we come from and how we operate. I suppose just for a little bit of background, we're also working on other new areas as well. So we're looking at the area of fertility and surrogacy, and we're developing policy there at the moment to ensure that all staff are, I suppose, able to discuss this with their managers and have a proactive assistance from the company when looking to start a family and to see where we can help. So that's something we're doing at the moment, and we're working on an ongoing basis to create a new policy there and to put that in place this year. So that's just kind of an overview of everything we're doing. I don't know if there's any other further questions, but if not, that's everything on my side.
Thanks so much, Donald, for that. Really appreciate it. It was great to hear of some of the initiatives that you're doing there, and particularly in a very advanced space in the DE&I area, which is really, really great. So thank you for taking the time to fill us in today. So I will hand over now to our third finalist, which is Paula Boiseux from Glynn. And I think Glynn are no stranger to anybody on the call in the DE&I space. And they're doing amazing work. And the judges observed that at Glynn allyship is reinforced through leadership, sponsorship, and employee networks with frank and open dialogues. And you've been especially successful in building a culture of allyship towards your LGBT colleagues. So a question for you, Paula, when you're telling us a little bit about your entry as well, is what do you think has helped inclusion become something that people actively step into rather than something that is HR-led alone?
Thanks, Jan, and congratulations to all the finalists in this category and to the team at CISC for being the ultimate winner. We were delighted to be in such amazing company in the list of finalists. And yes, Jan, especially given construction. And I think we're collectively breaking the mold and shaking up assumptions about the construction industry by showing up and putting ourselves forward for these kind of things. So yes, we're really proud to be shortlisted in this category. And when the judges highlighted our leadership, sponsorship, our employee networks, and open dialogue as the reasons for our shortlisting, it was really, really, gave us a sense of pride that we're sort of got the structures in place to have reached this point, but absolutely still on a journey. What I want to focus on today is what shifted inclusion from being kind of HR and policy led into being kind of organization owned. And so we've always looked at a top down and bottom up approach together, and that's really what's working for us. Sponsorship was key for us. So, rather than delegating out responsibilities, having exco sponsorship on each of the network groups. And, there was reasons behind why the exco sponsors selected the groups that they ultimately kind of joined into, whether that be through lived experience or allyship within the kind of network groups themselves, of which we have 5. So it is sponsored from the top down, from a budget perspective and from a presence and a visibility perspective. There's a governance structure in place too at board level. So our ED&I steering group, which is made up of people across the leadership team, reports into our board level ESR committee. So that gives that, that structure, that accountability from the top down. And I suppose it took it from, a HR thing or HR agenda into a leadership capability and everybody's responsibility. Secondly, then around capability and behaviour. So we have training and workshops in place to support ED&I and unconscious bias learning, and also allyship as a behaviour, both for our internal employees, our own employees, and our subcontractors, of which we have about 1,500 across all of our sites. So we do toolbox talks. We rolled out toolbox talk to our subcontractors. We also rolled out an inclusion charter, which all of our subcontractors, individual employees, or anyone arriving on our site has to sign up to before they can get onto the site. So it's just as important as manual handling and SafePass for us that they read through that inclusion charter and that they understand the commitment that our CEO has signed up to and that they must also sign up to. So the policies, procedures, and the kind of the structures are there that everybody's kind of educated around what good looks like, what behaviour looks like, and how allyship works. We ran an excellent workshop through Dublin Pride called How to Be an Ally, which was obviously focused on LGBTQIA plus community, but equally, you know, spoke to anybody that wants to be an ally for all of us. So that was a really, really good workshop that we hope to run again. Then from the bottom up perspective, you know, from the employee perspective, they're all employee led, our network groups are. So we have 5 network groups, and we also have a sports and social committee and a wellbeing ambassadors group. And all of them work together to ensure that, you know, where there is, you know, cross collaboration opportunities, that happens. So we meet quarterly as a group to make sure that events that are rolling out kind of are, you know, are really well understood and supported by each of the network groups chairs. So that works really, really well, and we've really good engagement. And KPIs actually set across each of the network groups around, you know, feedback, attendance and participation. And it's the network groups themselves who lead out these initiatives. You know, I will support them and help and you know, help coordinate, but ultimately it's up to the network groups to pick and choose what topics they want to focus on throughout the year. And they get feedback obviously from other attendees so that they can kind of build their plans around that. So I suppose we deliberately went to create, as Donal referenced, that environment of psychological safety through kind of visibility, the sponsorship, the governance piece, the training, and also it just took it beyond policies into actual real life experiences and that kind of employee experience as well. And the leadership piece around, you know, reinforcing what's acceptable, what's not acceptable, was really, really important. So I suppose in short, we set out clear expectations of behaviour. We constantly reinforce that through our communications, our values, our leadership kind of communications, and there is a sense of shared accountability and governance from top down. And I suppose by very definition, the ED&I community and that room of people that was buzzing with excitement at the awards ceremony a couple of weeks back, by very definition, it's a community of allyship, you know. So to be shortlisted as a finalist in this category is really, really amazing and important, you know, because we're all allies. So thank you for that. And again, congrats to all the finalists.
Hey, thank you so much, Paula. That was brilliant to hear about the initiatives that you've run. I think reinforced the message that it has to be employee led. We have to empower our people, and we have to show what the leading from the top and letting people know what's expected of them, but then empowering our employees to bring the message to everybody else is really important. So thank you for taking the time to give us some insight into your category now. And then we're going to move on to our next finalist, which is Hostel World, but unfortunately Emma Byrne was due to represent them today and she unfortunately couldn't make it. So just to give a quick overview and just a couple of lines on why they were nominated as a finalist and why they were chosen, is that their entry focused on defining very clear allyship roles in their company. Their programme trained people from being upstanders to confident, and their focus was they made allyship very practical. And this was a feature that in the nomination that really impressed the judges, is that, you know, you're making it very practical, very accessible to everybody, that it's not just a policy on the page, that it has given their teams permission to add the permissions and the language to act and change their behaviours on an everyday focus. So that was really, really important. So it shows again the themes of the category, that it's employee focused, employee led, but that we empower our people and that it's led from the top is really, really critical. So congratulations in absentia to Hostel World, led by Emma Byrne. So that brings us on to our penultimate finalist in this area, which I'm very pleased to introduce Adele Foster, who is representing Mary Immaculate College down in Limerick. Unfortunately, she told us today, although her picture is lovely and sunny, it's not that sunny down in Limerick as well, which is unfortunate. The judges comment here that the allyship shown in Mary Immaculate College shows up everywhere in their day-to-day activities, from bystander and consent training to peer ambassadors and to sector leading research. So Adele, we'd love to hear from you and hear a little bit more about your entry and what you're doing in the space. And then the little question for you is, what do you think has helped allyship feel like a shared responsibility across your staff and your students?
Thanks very much, Jen, and delighted to be here today with the other finalists. The awards were a fantastic night, so encourage anyone that's thinking of entering to definitely go for it. So yeah, my name is Adele Foster. I am the Quality, Diversity, Inclusion and Interculturalism Manager here at Mary Immaculate College. We're a third level education provider in Limerick. We have two faculties, Faculty of Arts, Faculty of Education. I suppose many of people will know of Mary Immaculate College because our majority of our students go out into primary school teaching, but we also have students going into secondary school teaching. We have a campus in Thurles as well that focuses on the secondary school teaching training, and many of our Faculty of Arts students will go on to a wide range of positions throughout the sector. So I suppose we see our role in Mary Immaculate College as having, I suppose, a real opportunity to impact the future of our society through our graduates. So our real focus is on trying to, I suppose, make sure that it's not, EDII is not sitting with our office, that it is across the campus through our students and staff. I am delighted to see so many construction companies in this area as well. My background is actually a quantity surveying from a long time ago. I kind of through various reasons ended up in the education sector. I suppose in terms of our public sector duty, as we are a public body, we do have, I suppose, that mandated legislative piece around ensuring we are working on equality and diversity, which certainly is an assistance when you're trying to get people on board. But at the same time, I think everyone in the college and the campus know that it can't be just added on. It needs to be a core part of people's work. And I suppose in terms of the question around allyship being a shared responsibility across staff and students, we really feel that our students are our ambassadors, and we try to get them from the get-go. Really, we take part in training with them at orientation stage around consent, around that consent is for everyone. We have a primarily female, I suppose, staff and student cohort, but at the same time, that piece around consent is for everyone. It's so important. We do focus a lot around sexual violence and harassment and consent with our students. They're going to be faced with issues in a classroom, in the wider sector, in perhaps organisations, or in their daily lives. We try and equip them earlier on with, I suppose, tools and language, and just, I suppose, empower them to, if their disclosure is made to them themselves or something happens to them, that they kind of know they have a bit of knowledge on what to do and how to support each other. And then in terms of staff, we deliver training across a range of areas around disclosure training, domestic violence training, and in terms of just allyship as well, in terms of LGBT and consent and bystander training as well for staff is included every year. We have a draft sexual violence harassment policy underway at the moment, and we have an ambassador program with our students and staff that they can become almost, they attend train the trainer sessions themselves to be able to continue this amongst the wider student and staff body. We really feel that it's kind of something that's embedded across the institution from our senior management. They're, our own president, Professor Dermot Nestor, will reference our work in many of his, I suppose, external and internal speeches. We have our LGBT staff network, which organises events, brings in guest speakers, and is open to everyone to attend. We have kind of a champion network at student and staff level to promote our work. We deliver kind of funding around EDI project awards so that it can, I suppose, encourage staff and students, if they have an idea that they could do with a little bit of funding to progress with a project, and it doesn't have to be research based, but we're there to kind of support that. So again, it embeds it across the institution. It can't just sit in a policy and in an action plan and gather dust on a shelf, which it is important that you have something there as a structure and I suppose as the reason, the evidence why you're doing something, but it has to be translated into practice and into practical applications throughout the college in terms of, I suppose, our LGBT support. We have rainbow crossings on campus, and I suppose historically, given that we are a Catholic institution, it was a very momentous occasion to have our staff network launched on campus and to have our rainbow crossings put in place with, you know, there was zero pushback in many ways. So we were delighted to be able to bring that on. Sometimes perception about these things doesn't come into play. And then in terms of, I suppose, students and staff, we do have an anonymous reporting tool in terms of any form of harassment. It's called Speak Out, and you can go on and disclose anything that you've experienced yourself or as a bystander. So I suppose we have a range of supports and opportunities for students and staff to engage with our work around allyship, around consent, around LGBT support, and we try to make sure it's not centrally EDI led, that we have people on board with us through, and as many others have said here today, that it's through this your own staff and your students wanting to take part, to volunteer in the work, but that they're also recognised for the work that they're doing as well through different ambassador programs or at different stages throughout the year. So I suppose that's kind of a brief roundup of a lot of the work we do. Again, similar to others, it's about empowering people to be their true self, but also to, if they see something that they feel that they can call it out, they feel that they're a bystander in a good way, that they're equipped and with what needs to happen if their disclosure is made to them, or if they see unwanted behaviour on campus or outside of campus, which is as important when you think of a student's journey in college or through their academic life. So that's just a brief roundup of I suppose the work we do. Delighted to be here, and congratulations to all the finalists and the winner in the category. And if anyone has any queries or anything like that, please do reach out. We're always willing to link up with people in the sector or outside the education sector as well, in terms of our work, because it can't just be in one sector, in one university or college. It needs to go across the whole sphere of sectors in order to kind of make a difference.
Okay. Thanks so much, Adele. It was really lovely to hear what you're doing in the space. And one thing that was really powerful for me was you made a point that you're working on the D&I space with your students who are young graduates and are going to go out into the workforce, but also think about who they're inspiring when they go in. They're teachers. So they're going out there to inspire even our younger generation. So we're getting the D&I message, even in at such a young age, is so critical and so important. So that was actually something that, as you were speaking, I thought, wow, there's such a chance to impact, those little ears when they go out every day, and giving them the confidence and the space to speak up and, be future allies and our future leaders in the company. So I thought that was brilliant. So thank you so much for sharing your experience today. And last but very not least, I'm going to hand over to our finalist and our winner of this category, who is Amy Martin from CISC. I won't lie, I'm delighted to be handing over to a construction company who were a winner in this area. Congratulations on your win in this category. The judges were blown away by the collaboration and the impact of your nomination. And I've actually I've seen your allyship toolkit and your 4Cs. It is phenomenal. Very, very impressed with that. Love it. And it was your initiative, like It's Only Banter, that you've helped challenge behaviour that was once normalised. And again, really focusing in the construction industry where there are massive perceptions in this. So I think that's, really, really fantastic and a well-deserved winner. So we're going to ask you to share a little bit more about your initiatives in this area, Amy. And your question in this space is, what difference have you seen when employees feel confident calling things out in a way that's constructive, see the pun there, rather than confrontational? So I'll hand over to you now.
Thanks, Jan. Good morning, everybody. It's really uplifting to hear all of the stuff that's been done by the other finalists. And I'm going to echo it again. To see so many construction companies in the final for this is incredible. It shows that we are really making a difference in the industry. We're changing the culture, we're changing the perception of the industry as well, which is amazing. So my name is Amy Martin. My pronouns are she, her, and I am the Equality, Diversity and Inclusion Partner at CISC. So I'm going to speak a little bit about the programs that we've put in place before I kind of go into the impact and the difference that they've had. I'm going to apologise as well. I'm quite sick this morning, so I've been coughing and sneezing and everything. So if I have to do that, I apologise sincerely. But I really wanted to be here to hear from the other finalists and to get to talk about our programs. So again, construction is going to come as no surprise to any of the panelists here. It's a difficult industry to be in when you're talking about EDI. It has a lot of unique challenges. It's a very traditional industry. It comes as no surprise, it's a very male-dominated industry. And historically, it has been quite difficult to challenge some of the structural norms that we have. There's a culture in the industry as well of banter, which, to be honest, is actually really needed because we're in a very high pressure industry. We're doing a lot of dangerous jobs, and you need someone who's going to be able to crack a joke, to be able to ease the tension sometimes. So that culture of banter has developed over the years because it's been necessary. But sometimes the line between banter and jokes and inappropriate behaviour can become a little bit blurred, and jokes start to be made at people's expense. So it can be a joke about their identity or their culture or their sexuality. And people start to feel isolated and excluded then because of the banter that's being had on our projects and in our offices. And for a lot of people, it's really scary or difficult to speak up or call this behaviour out because that then makes them a target. So if you're the person speaking up, you seem to become the issue. You're labelled as being too soft. You're the person then who can't take a joke. You're ruining the buzz. You're not up for the banter. You're no crack. And this has become a serious issue in our industry, and it was impacting how safe and included people were feeling at work. So a few years ago, we decided, look, we need to just tackle this head on. It's not something that's just in our company, it's across the industry, but we need to start within our company, tackle this head on and start to introduce campaigns around allyship and bystander engagement. So we've spent the last number of years really trying to promote this within our workplace, promoting how to call it out, the fact that we have a zero tolerance policy for inappropriate language and behaviour, and really trying to encourage people to be active allies. So we've done this in quite a few ways. It's a very holistic approach that we have. The first thing that we have is a call it out poster campaign. So this reminds colleagues that inappropriate behaviour has absolutely no place here. It encourages people to speak up and to call out bad behaviour, and it lets them know where they can raise concerns if they did want to escalate. So it puts them in touch with their HR business partner, puts them in touch with me, puts them in touch with the other supports that we have in place as well. So they're posters that are sent out to all of our sites to be displayed, so that it's just a subtle reminder to everybody, call it out, speak up, and that inappropriate language is not going to be tolerated. We also introduced a speak up policy, which sounds very similar to the Mary Immaculate College policy, which allows all of our employees and our wider supply chain to raise concerns anonymously if that's how they feel they want to raise their concerns. Not everybody wants to be part of an investigation. They don't necessarily want to raise a complaint or a grievance procedure or a disciplinary procedure. And they just want to let us know, look, this is happening. I'm letting you know, take care of it how you want to. And I think they have the confidence that when something is raised through that speak up policy, it is going to be dealt with appropriately and it is going to be taken seriously. We've also developed our toolkits around active allyship, which Jan has mentioned. So last year we hosted a public webinar around how to be an active ally, and we linked in with Belong to demonstrate active allyship for our LGBTQ plus colleagues. We linked in with male allies in the UK to talk about how men can be allies for women in our business. And we also linked in with the Irish Centre for Diversity. So James Colley from the Irish Centre for Diversity spoke about allyship for disabled colleagues as well. So again, really holistic approach, but it was really practical. We spoke about how can you be an active ally and how can you take those real practical steps in the workplace. So we have a model of the 4 C's, which is around curiosity, courage, commitment and consistency, which is what our toolkit is based off. So we talked about those C's in practice, and the toolkit is available to the public as well. If anybody wants to take a look at it, it's available on our website. And we felt like that was almost an act of allyship ourselves for our peers because we opened that up publicly. And then in 2023, we introduced our flagship inclusive language and behaviour programme, which is called It's Only Banter, very appropriately named. So It's Only Banter has become the cornerstone of our EDI strategy. It's a 90-minute workshop, it's interactive, it's done in person and online because we have a very dispersed workforce. We have over 100 projects across Ireland, the UK and Europe. So we need to have it in person and online so that it's accessible and everybody can get involved. We've had over 2,500 employees engage in this workshop since it was introduced, so it's had a huge effect across our business, and over 90% of the attendees would recommend it. So it's not always the case when people come into these workshops that they're enthusiastically getting involved, but once they've been in it and they engage and they understand what it's all about, they leave and they would recommend it to a colleague. So people often come up to me at the end of it and say, do you know what? I didn't really know what to expect. I didn't think this was for me. I didn't really get it. But now that I've done it and I've engaged, I understand that actually EDI is for everybody and everybody has responsibility to be an upstander and to engage as an ally, which is amazing. So we've introduced these workshops now as part of our induction for our new joiners. And then we do them kind of ad hoc in person across our projects when they're needed. So the workshop itself, it explores difference and how we can embrace difference to support our team. So we do some interactive activities at the beginning to let people know that there's different opinions in the room, there's different perspectives. It's okay to disagree with your colleagues as long as you do it in a respectful way. So that just kind of sets the tone for the program and sets the scene. We explore bias, privilege, micro-messaging, and then we look at real life scenarios which have arisen in our business, which makes it very relatable, very real. And we explore how you can address those situations. So what can you say to de-escalate a situation? How can you prevent it from becoming an argument, which is something that we often fear. If I say something, is it going to become confrontational? How to support your colleague who's at the receiving end of those inappropriate comments or behaviours. And it also explores how to escalate a situation if that becomes necessary. And then at the end of the programme, we explore some tips and tricks for calling out behaviour in a constructive way. So we talk about practicing curiosity rather than criticism, because we find if you ask someone a question, it often leads to a conversation rather than saying, you can't say that. It tends to shut things down. And sometimes that's absolutely necessary. But often if you ask a question like, I wasn't really sure what you meant. Can you tell me a little bit more? I didn't know that you felt that way. Can we have a conversation? Like asking the question, it opens a dialogue, and the person then doesn't feel like they're being attacked. They don't become defensive. They're open to learning most of the time, and they'll have that conversation. So it's much more constructive. We also talk about assuming that there's going to be a positive outcome if you speak up and call something out rather than a negative one. If you go into a situation with your sleeves rolled up and you're ready for a fight, the chances of there being an argument are a lot higher. Whereas if you go in and you expect that there's going to be a positive outcome, you're going in with empathy and understanding and feeling like the person is going to be open to what I have to say, they're going to be open to the conversation, the chances of that having a positive outcome are much higher. We also talk about assuming positive intentions. So saying something like, I don't think you meant to offend anybody, but your comments just didn't really land the way I think you wanted them to, or something like, you might not be aware, but that language that you use is a bit outdated. We don't really use those terms anymore. Here's what we say instead. Because a lot of the time what we find is that people actually don't intend to cause offense. They don't intend to cause harm. They don't want to cause upset, because that's awkward and uncomfortable for everybody. Most of the time people say things unknowingly that's offensive or upsetting, and they want to learn. They want to be open to being corrected and to use the right terminology. So if you go in and you assume that there was good intentions, again, it opens up the floor for a conversation. It's an opportunity to educate and for people to grow and learn and to do things differently the next time. So all of these kind of real life examples, the tips and tricks, it's what makes the sessions really relatable for people, but also gets people engaged in the conversation so that they're leaving with the tools and the confidence to be able to be active allies and to be an active bystander. So Jan, in a roundabout way, coming back to the question that you'd asked me, what's the difference that we've seen when employees call things out in a constructive way? I would say that all of these programs together have genuinely changed the culture at CISC. Employees now have the tools and the confidence to address the situation, and they know that they're not going to be punished for speaking up. They know that they're going to be supported, and they know that it's something we actively encourage. It also really helps to maintain healthy relationships on teams. So if you just speak to someone and have that conversation, and you're able to address things locally and quickly without the need for escalation, without the need to get HR involved, it really helps to maintain relationships, because we all have to work together at the end of the day, and we want to like the people that we work with, we want to get along with them. So we found it's been really helpful there. It makes underrepresented groups feel safer, because they know that someone is going to speak up on their behalf if they don't feel comfortable doing it themselves, if they're at the receiving end of inappropriate comments. So it's making them feel safer. It's making them have a lot more psychological safety in the workplace. And it also creates a space for people to ask questions and grow without the fear of getting things wrong, and without the fear of offending someone. Because I think sometimes we go too far in the opposite direction, and we're so afraid of upsetting somebody or offending them that we would rather say absolutely nothing at all. And then we're not questioning things. We're not learning other people's perspectives. We're not giving ourselves the opportunity to grow, or someone else the opportunity to talk about their background or to give us that information. So this creates that space where I know if I say something wrong, someone's going to call me out on it, but they're going to do it in a way that's constructive. They're going to assume my intentions were good, and we're going to be able to have a dialogue, and I'm going to come out of it better. So it's kind of removing that fear of offending when the intentions are good, and the outcome is going to be that we grow from it. And so, like I said, it's genuinely changed the culture in our workplace. It's something that we're developing. It's not perfect. We're always trying to evolve it. And we're actually really excited now to kind of turn it into toolbox talk style conversations that we're going to have on our sites and projects, to keep that momentum going and really encourage people to stand up, speak out, and to be an ally.
Well, thank you so much, Amy. Really appreciated the information you gave us there today, and the insight into what's going on at CISC. I think it was really inspirational, and thank you to all our finalists, both here and in absentia. We really appreciate them, taking the time to share their nominations and why they were finalists in this area. And I know when we prepared, we had a catch-up call earlier this week, and Andrew, you said, if you have 1 or 2 points that you'd like to share as tips and takeaways. I actually ran out of space writing down tips and takeaways from everybody that we heard from today. It's so empowering. I'm in HR a very, very long time. I'm only active in the DE&I space in the last 3 to 4 years. But one thing that I know from it, and even after today, is any interaction I have, I come away feeling emotional. I feel hopeful. I feel like we're all on the right track. I think it's a wonderful community. I'm not sure, somebody, and apologies, I can't remember who, somebody mentioned it as a community and a safe space that we're in. I do feel privileged that PJ Hegarty are part of that, and really helping drive that message forward. So that's just from my own personal space. But from the takeaways, I just think, from Board Gosh, you talked about making it authentic, making sure you have your employees and your colleagues at the heart of everything that you do, because so much time it's very, I won't say it's easy to draft a policy, but it's very, you can draft a policy, but it's bringing that policy to life. Making sure your colleagues feel safe and supported to bring their most authentic selves to work. In Glenveigh, Paulie, you mentioned again, the focus is acknowledging not just on the employees that we work with in construction. There can be up to 700 people on our sites at any one time, and maybe only a third of them work for us. So, that charter that you have, showing that it impacts everybody, and what you will tolerate and not tolerate as a company is amazing. So I love that charter side of it, and everybody knows what's expected when they step on a Glenveigh site. They're going to know what's expected from them in that space. And then the bottom up perspective, I think that's another theme all the way through. Employee led. You need your sponsors, you need your board involved, but you need to have your employees empowered and sponsored as well. Mary Immaculate College, look, I found that so inspiring, that you're inspiring our future leaders who are going to go on and inspire even more junior future leaders. I mean, that just is so heartwarming and amazing that that message is getting out there to those little ears on a daily basis. And again, the bottom up approach, challenging biases coming from the industry. So you're in an industry that has biases associated with it too, like the construction. So challenging those. And then on to Amy in CISC. I mean, we just said, we're coming from challenging industries, but empowering people to say just because it's already been done doesn't mean we have to accept it. I loved also calling out the fact that we're not perfect. We know it goes on. You know, don't be afraid to say we know it goes on and we're willing to do something about it. You know, the anonymous options as well is really important too, because until people get more comfortable, this is still a very new space. So giving them options to report it anonymously if they genuinely haven't got to that point yet where they feel safe. And then also, you know, not always going in challenging. That's sometimes just the conversation maybe. And we hope that, you know, there's so much good in all of our people that sometimes they just don't know they've said something inappropriate. It's still very new. And, you know, in construction, I think is one area at the moment, I think it was called out recently, that we now have 5 generations of people working in our companies. So you have the very, very young, new, kind of fresh ideas who are growing up in this space to people that have never grown up in this space. So acknowledging that, you know, we have to try and communicate across all areas. And then finally, because I just could talk forever, there was so much good today, is that we're empowering our people to speak up. The area of psychological safety is so important, letting our people know it's safe to say, I'm not comfortable in this space. It can be practical initiatives. They don't have to be big budget. They don't have to, you know, be all encompassing, but just bringing them to life from policy to people. Allyship affects everybody across all areas of the DE&I space. And that, yeah, making people feel safe and empowered. That's it. I'm going to stop talking now because I could talk forever. And I shall hand back to Andrew to sum up what it was a wonderful session, I think.
Jan Glynn from PJ Hegarty and Sons. Have you got a camera on my desk? Because you've got all my notes.
Sorry, did I rob all your points?
I think I took the same notes as you did. It's like, so you've done my job for me. Thank you. But we do have some time left. So I do have some questions as well. But yeah, thank you, Jan. That was a brilliant wrap up. Brilliant takeaways. I mirror everything you say. I'm going to quickly run through mine and I'll get to the questions. So yeah, Donal, amazing work being done in an area where you wouldn't expect that kind of work to be done. So you're kind of really pushing ahead and going with the trans issue, which many other organizations probably shy away from because it's become, I don't understand why, but it has become so divisive. But you're tackling it head on, which is only to be congratulated and applauded. So thank you very much to yourselves and the full team at Bord Gáis Energy for sorting that, for tackling that. Where did I go next? Idel, amazing programs there. And as I think Jan mentioned, that you're dealing with the future generations. You're getting the D&I conversation going with the people that will go into industry, just go all throughout society and make a real big difference. So the ripples of the work that everybody's doing here is incredible. So thank you for that. Right, on to the questions now. Okay, I'm going to start from the top. So Donal, I just wanted to find out, dealing with the trans issue, I wondered, did you take any learnings from the marriage equality campaign where they focused very much on sharing of personal stories and the human element? Did you have any trans colleagues kind of sharing their story and really bringing it home to not being an abstract issue, but being a human issue and a person behind the stories, the person behind all the noise that's going around and the changes that you're looking to make?
That's an excellent question. I suppose first off, we had interaction with everybody who works for Bord Gáis Energy to get their viewpoints on the policy. And I suppose although we didn't have a direct transgender colleague at the time, we had spoken with staff members who had relatives that had the learned experience, and kind of we worked from what input they had provided us to try and understand better and to work out how we can help develop a suitable policy and system in place in Bord Gáis Energy. As well as that, we worked with our parent company Centrica, who would be a bigger entity and have more experience in developing policy on this front as well. So we would have taken learnings from that side as well.
Sure. Fantastic. Thank you. It's great to know. And if anybody out there does want to take on that human element, because oftentimes there's an issue with disclosure as well, which is a whole separate discussion. But there are outside bodies, expert bodies out there that will help with that. So people like Tenny, people like Pride in Dublin, who will deal with any of the kind of protected areas. But there's the Irish Traveller movement. There are always people that you can speak to and lean on. So anyone watching this shouldn't be afraid of reaching out to those people, because those bodies are very open to collaboration and spreading the message and working with people outside. So that's just something I wanted to say. Paula, over to you. I love the inclusion charter. That sounds like a fantastic initiative, and I loved what you said about it having the same level of importance as, say, the Safe Pass. Fantastic. And my question was that developed in-house, the inclusion charter, or was a collaboration involved in it? And I'm not fishing if it was us, but
it might have been a bit of you guys. It came from the CIF and IBEC, so there's a piece of work that they had developed, and you could just amend it and sort of use it for your own purposes. So we took learnings from those bodies, and they probably had worked with you guys from a few years back, I would say. So thanks very much for that. But as well, toolbox talks are really important for us as well. So when we rolled it out, so when somebody needs to go onto our site, they have to go through an induction, and anybody in construction will have the same sort of setup. To get through the turnstile, you have to complete a series of tasks or watch some stuff or whatever, and it's with that. So you can't get through the turnstile unless you've provided your manual handling cert, your Safe Pass cert, and have gone through this site induction, which includes the charter. But that was fine for people that had never been on a Glenveagh site before. We could catch those. So for the existing people that worked on sites that already had gone through an induction, we rolled out a toolbox talk. So everybody had a toolbox talk as well around it. And at the same time, our own employees have through induction done e-learns around the policy, ED&I, and unconscious bias, but to capture those who had already been employees when we rolled those out in 2023, we sort of went through a kind of a campaign around getting people through those trainings, so that everybody, we have 100% completion rate on the trainings, which was fantastic. Yeah.
Brilliant, thanks. Good. I honestly didn't know whether our charter had fed into yours, so it's great to hear that happened. But it's great to hear that you've kind of taken that resource and are using and applying it day in, day out, which is really good, and giving it life. So thank you for that. Idel, my next question is to you, and I wanted to know, you talked about the ambassador programs that you have. Are they open to both students and colleagues together, or are there student ones and are there colleague ones?
We have kind of separate ambassador programs, and for staff it's our EDII champions, and then for students they're kind of consent ambassadors to spread the word around for us. And we do find, I suppose, student engagement is up and down, especially in this environment. Not everyone is able to live, find accommodation near campus, so a lot of our students are commuting. A lot of them are just coming to their lectures, they're gone again. So us putting on training or sessions that isn't embedded in the curriculum sometimes can be hit and miss in terms of engagement. So that's where those student ambassadors kind of, a lot of the times, if you remember your student days yourself or in school, if one person goes and kind of will draw a crowd. So it's great that they're there and they're willing to get involved, and they see that piece about how they'll need it if they're in like many of our students, if they're studying to become a teacher, primary or secondary, they have placement starting from year 1 right through to year 4. So they're straight away in school. So they see that piece that that they want to be kind of empowered themselves, and the need for it. And then in terms of our staff, we have our EDI champions that are from, and they volunteer to be from both academic side of the house, professional services, Limerick and Thurles. And we try to keep it light touch. Nobody wants, I suppose, an addition to their already busy life. So a lot of it is, again, just around kind of encouraging colleagues to, we do a lot of kind of surveys and consultation with staff at different points throughout the year, and just encouraging staff to get involved in it, because we try and make sure that we're developing plans and actions that are evidence-based, that are not just kind of plucking them from the sky, that it suits our cohort, because we do have that, I suppose, female-dominated piece, but in terms of, I suppose, more senior roles, they often tend to be male-dominated. So we're just trying to keep the I suppose light shining on that equality piece.
Yeah, and I suppose thinking my question through, I can see that it makes sense to keep them separate, to keep the two bodies separate, because the psychological safety piece. So I imagine there's a lot more sharing without staff watching the students, and likewise. So I can completely make sense now. So well done for that. Amy, I don't have any questions except to say get well soon. Except to say get well soon, and also to say we also do training around banter and inclusive language. But I imagine that your LinkedIn will be flooded now with requests about more information about it's only banter trainings, because that sounds amazing. I'll probably get shot for saying that, but never mind.
Fine, we're always happy to share. And to be honest, I am definitely going to be hitting Paula up about their inclusion charter. And Donal, we're in the middle of developing our transitioning and the workplace policy. So you're all going to hear from me anyway. So I'm always happy to get messages on LinkedIn to share what we're doing.
Thank you. Jan, before we finish, I do have one question for you.
Okay.
I think Paula made the great point about change coming from top down and bottom up as well. And I would like to say that I would like to congratulate PJ Hegarty and Sons for really embodying that as well, because I know that all of the team at PJ Hegarty and Sons that I've dealt with very much have the whole D&I. It's almost running through their blood now, and I'm sure that hasn't been there, and so it's credit to you and your team for kind of engendering that in the whole team, because I can just see, everyone that I met at the awards, everyone that I've dealt with, they really are behind this. So thank you very much for that. Okay, and there I am going to wrap up. Jan gave all my wrap-ups and takeaways earlier, so I won't spend any more time doing that. So I'll just concentrate on the thank yous now. So thank you for all of you for the amazing work that you're doing out there. Massive thank you for sharing it all. Thank you to Jan and PJ Hegarty and Sons for sponsoring the award and being a great host for today's session. Thank you to our finalists. Thank you to Paula, to Donal, and to Adele for sharing your stories. Thank you to Amy, our wonderful winner, and thank you to Kira behind the scenes for all the essential work you do to keep this running smoothly. Thank you to the audience for joining us and taking on this message, and hopefully you've picked up a lot to take back to your organizations. The recording is available shortly if anyone's watching live, and please do contact ourselves at the Irish Centre for Diversity, or any of the panelists if you have any questions or would like to take this discussion further. Thank you for joining us. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Andrew. Thanks, everybody.